So I think there's something to what Sandy said before of we are never saying that self-selecting teams are perfect by any stretch. They're absolutely not. But they might be the least worst way of doing it. And we do think they're better than managerial selection.
And we do this, I think we do this out of respect for the reader, because we assume that people don't need to start 200 years and 5 centuries of science to get to a starting point. We respect the reader. No, they have some knowledge about teams, they have some knowledge about Agile, and we can just start and give them something really targeted. Like, we have this problem, we have this philosophy, and now we want to just incrementally learn. And that's why we kept it very small and practical.
Like, I think we would all look at that now and go, no, we would never do that. And I've got this secret hope around, and this is where my head's at because we've been immersed in this topic for 2 years of rewriting the book, but that on a team selection basis, that it would be as crazy for a manager to pick your teams as it would be to start a waterfall project tomorrow. So I hope that seed grows.
Entry music. Da, 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 da. It's the Bob and Josh Show.
Welcome to the Metacast. We have 2 guests here. It's been a while since we've done this.
It's been a long time.
It has been a long time. And not only do we have guests, but they are speaking to us from the future. They're in New Zealand, and it is technically tomorrow. So this is exciting. We are time traveling. Here we are. So with us, authors, soon to be second edition authors, which they will tell us all about. David and Sandy have joined us, and they are, Bob knows them. I am playing catch up here. So I am excited to learn from everybody. So Bob, is there anything that you want to say that I missed about these wonderful people?
I mean, I think they're both relatively, I mean, from my point of view, pretty famous. They're authors. They wrote a first edition of something called Creating Great Teams, which to me was one of the first books about self-selection. There was some discussion around self-selection at that time, and then the book emerged. And it was small. One of the things that grabbed me at the time, everyone's, me included, everyone's writing these big, thick tomes, and they both wrote something, very targeted. It was timely, and I think one of the tests of a great book in any space, but the Agile space, is do you get the opportunity to do a second edition? So the second edition has come up. So I want to hear some of their, maybe not the inspiration for the first book, but some of the lessons learned between edition 1 and edition 2 would be a good thing to explore, and just share with us and share with the audience and see where it goes. Sandy's, well, I'm introducing them for you. So I'll let them introduce. I'll shut up. So authors and book authors, and from New Zealand, coming in from New Zealand. And what else can you share about yourselves?
I thought you said you were going to shut up. I thought you were going to let them talk, Bob.
I know.
You're doing a horrible job.
I know. I can't help it. So, Sandy, please introduce yourself. Please.
I just want to say something before I introduce myself, and that's thank you for saying that you liked that the book was small, because that's a really conscious choice we made, and our second book is small too. And we do this, I think we do this out of respect for the reader, because we assume that people don't need to start 200 years and 5 centuries of science to get to a starting point. We respect the reader. No, they have some knowledge about teams, they have some knowledge about Agile, and we can just start and give them something really targeted. Like, we have this problem, we have this philosophy, and now we want to just incrementally learn. And that's why we kept it very small and practical. But you did ask me to talk about myself, which I gladly do for hours. I'll try to keep it short, but and also thank you for pronouncing my name correctly. It's Mamoli, just straight up Italian. My dad's from Milan. I'm from Austria, and if you're wondering why I've got a strange accent, it's I'm Austrian. I lived in Denmark for about 15 years. I lived in New Zealand for 20 years, and the official name of the accent is Stuffed Up. So nobody can place me anywhere. And brief about me, I started life as my first career as a professional athlete, and that is kind of important because it has taught me so much about how to work with teams and how teams work. and also about leadership of teams. And I moved on from there, growing up, going to uni, and getting a degree in natural language processing. Unfortunately, at the time, artificial intelligence was nowhere. It was the AI winter, and we all thought it's never going to work, and also didn't have the computing power and so on. So I moved into totally normal, straight up software development, and did that for about 10 years and learned more about teams and how people collaborate. And upon moving to New Zealand, I started a company called Nomad, because I wanted to bring agile ways of working to, it sounds grand, bring them to New Zealand, but reality was I had been living in a bubble in Europe. I had been working agile and decided I'm never going to go back to the old ways of working. So started creating little worlds for myself that over time grew. And did some work with teams, crashed into all the boundaries that you crash into when you have no idea of how organizations work. Learned over time, and then my pockets of that I could influence and work with became the size of organizations. And around that time was also when I met David and started working with him.
Thank you, Sandy. David, how about you? A bit of an introduction.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Bob, and great to be here. Thanks for having us. So my name's David, and I am English originally. You nailed the pronunciation of my name as well. Thank you for that. Although I think mine's easier than Sandy's. I started working in agile and product type organizations in the early 2000s with online poker and casino companies, and it was a bit of a baptism of fire because they were ahead of the game in terms of agile and product thinking. And I think it's just because there was so much money to be made in that area. So they were doing things differently and faster. And it was a really great introduction into doing things in the ways that we now accept as normal. But I've been in New Zealand for the last 12 or 13 years, and lucky enough to work with Sandy as part of Nomad 8. And it's there where we, working together, came up with some of the ideas that sit behind the book that we originally released 10 years ago, and we've just done the second edition of now, and it's imminently going to be coming out. And your question, Bob, was around what have we learned in between? Was it with we did a first edition? What inspired us to do a second one?
I think so. I think some. What are the lessons learned, or what was the inspiration? Because it takes effort to write a book. So, what inspired you both to do it again?
Yeah, and I can tell you, and I think Sandy will verify this, it's a lot of work to do a second edition, and it's a lot more work than you think. You might have the idea of, done something once, how hard could it be to just freshen things up and dust off what we did last time? I can tell you it's probably more effort than the first edition, as it turns out, due to the amount of research you need to do and the things that have changed over time. I don't know what Sandy would say, but I can tell you what I think was the kind of key to doing a second edition was just there's now so much more evidence for this idea and that it might work. So in the first edition, we kind of came up with a way of a method of doing self-selection. And we didn't invent the idea of it. I think lots of people had tried and experimented, and in some cases worked or not. But we had a method which we think worked. And we had case studies that we'd done and been part of to say, hey, we think this thing works. And here's some diagrams and pictures and a checklist you might help you to do it yourself. And then in the meantime, in the kind of 10 years that have happened since, it's just popped up more and more. So we're seeing companies in Europe and the US and Canada and Australia and New Zealand, sometimes with our help, as when we help facilitate this idea of people picking their own teams, but sometimes just off their own bat. They've either read the book or not, and they've tried it themselves. And we were increasingly being connected with people and examples where we're saying, this works in a bank over there. Oh, this works in this startup over here. And this has worked over here. And the idea behind this second edition was to collect some of those stories and that evidence that's grown over time and present it not just as a fresh idea like it was 10 years ago, but actually, hey, here's the thing which seems to work in loads of different contexts now. And we hope that helps people who are sitting in one of those contexts wondering how to move teams around.
I think what I remember, I think you captured my memory from when the first book came out, David, is there was a lot of talk around self-selection, but there weren't case studies, if you will, or there wasn't sort of complete treatments of it. And that's the initial thing now that I recall, that the initial book was, here's some evidence. Here's some complete evidence. Here's a framework, if you will, or a model, and we've used it. And if I recall, wasn't the first, you had tried it, you didn't do it in startups. I think one of the case studies at least was in a large financial firm or something like that. So it wasn't an easy self-selection target, if I remember. Is that correct?
Yes. That's true. It wasn't a financial institution, but it was an e-commerce company, and it was quite a famous e-commerce company in New Zealand. And by famous, I mean, if you bring the site down, you are literally on the front page of all the papers, and people are going on strike, and it's a national disaster. So it was kind of it was seriously a high-profile company.
Yeah.
And that was the very, very first time, and you're right. At the time, there was the idea existed, but what didn't exist was basically a how-to. And when we said, "Hey, we need to do this," we started Googling. We started trying to find any instructions for how we could possibly do that, and couldn't find anything. And what we realized, if that's the case, then you have two options. One is you are onto something really, really good, but it hasn't been written down yet, or you are batshit crazy and it's a real dumb idea. But at the time, we went with it. And I also wanted to add to what David said earlier, that what has prompted us to write a second edition is to give people even more help for how to run their own self-selection, because as David said, there are different contexts now. And the good thing when you write a book is that people know your name, and they read a book, they try out self-selection, and then they write your emails or they call you on Zoom, and then you get all this evidence for how it works in different contexts. And we have had stories from our first self-selection was a company, the e-commerce company, and that was in growth mode. New people were showing up all the time. But we now also have companies that use it when they are shrinking, when there are layoffs, which is quite topical at the moment. When when they lose people, when they need to restructure in a good way, and also companies that are super structured using frameworks like SAFe, to companies that are not using any frameworks at all and have their own magic agile creation. So anything from both extremes to in between, we have seen.
Now, we should have done this in the pre-work. This is a no safe zone, so we can't mention safe at all.
Don't listen to him. Don't listen to him.
In the Medicat.
Here's a very little secret. There are some wonderful pieces of safe that I use every day.
I know.
Bob has a bone to pick with the commercialism of safe, but
so do I.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's fair. That I think we all do. But yes, there are bits of safe that I think are interesting and useful when used appropriately, like most things.
I was just poking the bear.
Yeah.
I just poked the
you
bear.
You are the bear. Come on. What are you talking about here?
So I'm curious. I did in my product owner book, I did 3 editions. It was self-published, so I could choose to do it. And as I went through, I agree with you that it's not, I thought it was going to be a slam dunk. I thought it was going to be easy, like edition 2. And then I thought edition 3 was going to be even easier. Oh, this is going to be easy. And it wasn't. It was actually harder. But the other thing I noticed is I said stupid things earlier or I changed my mind. It wasn't stupid things, but I changed my perspective and like in quite a bit from edition 1 to 2 to 3. So could you both share any changes of your mind or changes of perspective that surprised you at all? Maybe Sandy, go first.
Something where I say, actually, we were wrong, or it was the knowledge at the time in the first book, was that teams have to be really stable and they need to be together for a really long time. And it's all about stable teams. And what has happened since was we haven't had the luxury to have stable teams. So people started out having stable-ish teams that were rotating way faster than anything that we thought was optimal.
Yep.
And there's knowledge with dynamic reteaming, Heidi Halfin, Amy Edmondson, about very quick dynamic teaming and reteaming. So we have taken that into consideration, and I think that now self-selection is even more important, and it's because it is happening more often. Individual team skills are more important than they have ever before. So the case that we're making that it all needs to be about stable teams in the first edition, I think, is not true anymore.
Oh, that's a cool revelation, and I see that emerging. Right, I see that that's emerged. David, how about you?
And sorry,
no, Sandy, go ahead.
Yeah, just one more thing, and I think it's going to go even more in that direction, because if we have teams that are where we now or soon will have AI colleagues, that the tendency seems to be they will be smaller and they will probably change more often. So this is accelerating and going even more in the direction that we're very wrong 10 years ago. Oh, not wrong, but it was the time.
Well, I appreciate. I mean, you would. Sometimes people don't admit that. So, and I mean, again, or they get stuck in their ideas. So I think it's refreshing and good for Agilists to change our ideas over time. David, anything else?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you want to list the ways I've been wrong in the last 10 years, we have a big list. But it is good, like just the act of getting that perspective to think about what you did and said 10 years ago is useful, like you say, because that leads you to the ways you were right and maybe wrong as well. The biggest thing for me, is it kind of like fundamentally changed about what we talked about then is when we originally wrote it was all about this idea of an event and marketplace where we would bring people together for a full day, usually is how long it took to pitch what the teams were, what they needed to be, and who would go where and how we'd facilitate that. And I think we focused on that because that's what we focused on. We were the facilitators of a self-selection event. That was the problem we had to solve. Mm-hmm. But over time, what I've learned is, or what we've learned is, it's not about the event. It's about the idea of letting people choose who they work with and what they work on. And it's that idea, that principle, that's far more important than an event. And actually, you can't throw the event away, but it's not as much of a focal point as we originally thought. And actually just involving people in the decision as to which team they're in. And to connect with what Sandy's saying, the more dynamic your teams are, the less likely it is you're going to have an event, and more likely you just need to embrace the idea that whenever someone needs to change team, and that's pretty often, that we lean on the idea of giving them choice versus being like a chess piece that a manager moves, and we say, you are now over here with this team that you may or may not want to be part of, and say, no. What would it look like if you were the active decision maker in this? And the stuff we designed around the event will help that, but actually I'm less focused on an event now, more about, no, let's just have the principle underneath that you get to choose. And some of the checklists that we originally had go away then, because it's not the focus.
Hey, Josh, do you have anything that's come up? I don't want to.
Yeah. So, it's nice of you to let me speak, Bob. Thank you. This is a glorious moment.
First time.
First time, long time. So I have been appropriately labeled, or I've transitioned into being a product person over the past 5 or 6 years. I can imagine some of my colleagues in the product space kind of freaking out about this a little bit. Like, wait a minute, how am I supposed to plan? How do I build a product when my teams are always changing? Because I have been a proponent, as it sounds like you were for some time, and you've learned different, which I'm really intrigued to learn more about this, about teams need to be stable, and like you need to be able to count on them. So in the product realm, as you start to forecast what you can build, what are some of the challenges that you've helped product folks get over, like mentally, of like, how can this possibly work? Just can you talk through from a product lens of someone that lives in that world and how this could understandably scare them, but ultimately you all have been able to prove that this actually is better. So what are some of those things that you've unlocked for the product side of the house to say, like, yeah, this is cool, let's do it?
So First of all, I want to do away with the idea that when we say teams don't have to be that stable, that we are ripping teams apart every single week. And as a product manager, you get a new set of people every week. That is not what's happening. And the guiding factor in a self-selection is that people do what's best for the company. They do what is best for the company, how they achieve results in the best way, in the way that where they feel they can contribute best and where they can learn the best. So this is not just a me, this is what I want to do. This is fundamentally giving people the ability to solve a bigger problem. So as a product manager or product person, I think there is a way of thinking of it. If you choose the team, you will get it wrong. It won't be perfect. If the teams choose themselves, they too will get it wrong and won't be perfect. But what you will get is a group of people who will, first of all, not whinge to you because they really want to do something else. And they will also be more likely to perform well because they have chosen to work with those other people and they have chosen to work on your particular thing, on this product, on this part of the product. So I think as a product person, you actually get a lot out of it. You get a motivated group of people who want to work on your product. In terms of stability, they are not being ripped apart all the time. But we do repeat self-selection on a regular cadence, and that can be anything between 3 to 6 to 9 months. And I've never seen an entire company ripping everything apart and nobody staying in the team they're in. Because usually, because people have chosen the team they're working and what they work on, they're quite happy. So most people choose to stay, and then there are some people that move around. And so there is a degree of stability. When you don't have stability is when there's no stability in the company, like you having a major restructure because you're laying people off. And that is hard times regardless. That's nothing self-selection can fix, but it can help you get the best possible teams out of it in that situation. Do you want to add something, David?
Yeah, you made me think with your question that would product people kind of hate the idea or freak out at the sound of it? And I would say they definitely will, because everybody does. The first time we describe self-selection and teams kind of being part of that choice, whether it's dynamic teams or stable, but just the act of choosing which team, people usually go, whoa, 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 whoa. Yeah, no, that breaks so many different boundaries and paradigms they have in their heads. I kind of think it must be similar to what the reaction would have been to Agile ways of working when you were used to doing things in a waterfall way. So what about my plan? What about the Gantt chart? What about the? So whenever we talk to people about the idea of self-selection, especially if you're melding this with dynamic reteaming, we have to allow people to freak out for a while because we know they will. And do you know what we did ourselves initially? To go, well, it's a great idea, but surely it can't work because of all these reasons that we go on to invent. So that's okay that no one's on board with it straight away, because it is quite a big shift. But I'd say anybody who's been involved in selecting teams as a manager, and I was for quite some time, will know the pain of doing it, the pain of those afternoons in a locked in a room with a whiteboard where you're trying to draw who goes where, and can this person go here or can they go over there, and or they hate this person but actually they want to learn about this thing down here. And it's a really hard process to go through as a manager. And then there's that moment where you lay out your chess pieces, you come out of the room and you're like, yeah, hey everyone, we've solved the problems, these are the new teams. And people look at it and go, oh my God, I don't want to be there. I hate that. No, I never told you about this, but I certainly don't want that. What's that team doing? So I think there's something to what Sandy said before of, we are never saying that self-selecting teams are perfect by any stretch. They're absolutely not. But they might be the least worst way of doing it. And we do think they're better than managerial selection.
You know, something as you all were describing this, and I tried to equate it back to things I've seen in my history. And you get that question from executives after you do a hackathon. And the executives are always like, why can't we get this type of productivity, more than just this 2 weeks or this 3 days or whatever? And how much is it the self-selection that happens in a hackathon where people are choosing who they work with and what they work on? It sounds like you guys have some evidence that would support that that's a key reason why those hackathons feel different. Would you guys agree with that?
Yes. It is so funny and amazing you should say that, because we got inspired to do self-selection after a hackathon. Like, we had a 24-hour hackathon, a shipwreck day at our e-commerce company. And what we observed, like for me, it was the first hackathon I'd ever been part of. And what I observed was like all those people who had this joy of producing something, of not being hindered by bureaucracy, by just choosing, I want to get this thing done. I want to work on this. And I get together with people who also want to work on this, and we are, and nobody's worried about utilization or putting themselves in more than one team. So all those things go away, and we experienced that. And I do remember, like, super vividly, to go home enthusiastically starting to blog about it, how this is amazing, and then ending with like, but it's such a shame that we can't do this every day, that this is not our normal lives. And that was exactly the moment it struck me and going, wait a minute, why couldn't it be like this every day? What if we could create this? So the day after, I got on my bike, raced to work, and said, David, we totally got to do this. I have no idea how, help me here. No idea how, but this is what we need to do. And that was the very first time we ever started to think about self-selection. So it's brilliant that you basically came up with the same thing.
Those are exciting times. And those moments, like, so this is the last question that then I'll hands right back to Bob. David, when Sandy rolls into your office or wherever you guys met that first morning, what was your reaction? Was it like, you are crazy, or maybe like, that might work, or somewhere in between?
A little bit of column A and B. I think allow me to go through the same thing that I just said everybody goes through, because I did. I was like, great idea, awesome idea. Yeah, we should definitely do that. And then I think you start to think about practicalities, don't you? Right? How would that work? Or what about this person? Or actually, what about this team? No. Terrible idea. No. Let's just go back to the chess piece moving around, please, because that's easier and familiar. And the good thing about that scenario is Sandy's not someone who takes no as an answer. So was able to persuade me gently that I should keep thinking about this, and allowed me to go through that wave of like, oh gosh, no, this would never work, through to, actually, do you know what? What if we did? And what would be the worst case scenario and things like that? And actually they weren't that bad when we started to think that through. So yeah. I think we were able to kind of rev each other up a little bit at that point and say, actually, let's do this. Let's try it and see what the results might be. And the results blew us away. They were better than I think either of us.
It's fantastic. All right, Bob, the ball is back in your court, sir.
Well, no, I'm thinking about Sandy said something earlier that captured my attention. She said, I forget the context exactly, but what's best for the company. And I wrote it down. And so there's this, I think there's a misconception in self-selection that it's the inmates running the asylum, that people can do whatever the hell they want, right? And then they're going to destroy the company as a result of it or something. And there's nothing further from the truth in that. And I like that compelling, yes, there's self-selection. So it's almost a duality of what's good for the team, what's good for the culture, what's good for the empowerment, but also what's good for the business and what's good for the company. Can one of you or both of you talk to that, if I got it right, that balance there that's to be struck?
Absolutely. And I think it's a super important balance. And it's not in a way, it is the inmates running the asylum, but it's a shared asylum. It's an asylum that we all care about. It's the asylum with a purpose. And we want to make the best possible asylum. So I think having that engagement, having people's buy-in, like we all go to work because we actually either care about our companies. That's why we work there, I would hope. And If we do, then we all want to have good workplaces. And in order to achieve that, we want to not just be egocentric, but having that duality of a bit like a sports team. We win together and we fail together, but we also want to have some self-actualization. And sometimes there can be a tension. But we all grown-up people are grown-ups, people are adults, they're responsible adults. And I think when we have those conversations and we have and we treat them like responsible adults, they act like that. Like what we have seen is it's not that everyone always gets to be on the team they want to be on as their number one choice. But if they are adults and they sometimes have to compromise, even for a little while, then at least people know why, and they know how the compromise came about and why they're compromising a little bit. So I find people are absolutely capable of dealing with the duality and with making some compromise sometimes.
Yeah,
David, go ahead.
Yeah, I think I can build on that with, you could contrast the method we've got with just saying, right, everyone, which team do you want to be in? Send me an email with the team you want to be in. And I guarantee you that won't work because all the preferences will overlap. There'll be too many people over in one place, not enough in another. So we can't say, hey, everyone, where do you want to go? Let's go in those places. That's not what we are doing. We are trying to say, no, we want to involve you in the decisions, the trade-offs, the arguments, the compromises that we have to make, not just give everybody what they want. Because there's no world we live in where everybody just gets what they want. So instead say, no, there's a puzzle to be solved here. Let's have a go at solving it. And that's why when we do run self-selection, we run it in these short iterations. So you put your photo where you want to be, and then we pause and then get feedback and go, right, do these teams work? Oh, no, we've got gaps over there, and we change things around. And I can tell you the first iteration, we've never had teams that are okay, ever. So people go up, first go, here's where I think I should be. It's never worked after that first iteration. We have to pause and say, no, for the company, for the purpose that we're trying to achieve here, we're going to have to shuffle things around. And that's when people go, oh, okay, well, I could go over there or over there. So it's about making the compromises together that I think gives us all the benefit. This is not a bad thing. This gives us the benefit because if I've been involved in that choice and I've gone, I don't want to be here, but I'm going to go there because I can see why.
Right.
It removes a whole level of pain and whinging that Sandy mentioned before because I've made that decision. Previously, I would have gone, oh, I can't believe my manager stuck me here. Oh my God, in my next one-to-one, I'm going to complain about these 6 things. And now what we've seen is people going, okay, I don't like this, but it was my call. And therefore, I'm going to try and make this as good as possible. So it's like removed a layer of BS actually from a management point of view that you no longer have to deal with because you've been part of that decision and trade-off and maybe suboptimal decision, but I was part of it.
Exactly. Thank you. I want one more question about the book. And so I found after my coaching book, I was kicking myself. Like I had to make it done. Even though it was self-published, I had to finish it and get it into the rest of the publishing cycle. And then I was like, oh, I wish I would have talked about this more. Oh, I think I missed this or I missed that. I was whining to myself, but it was too late. I didn't want infinite writing. So is there one thing that each of you can think of and you now, and it's okay to say no, it's perfect. But is there one thing that you missed out on the book that you wish you would have spent a little bit more time on or included?
If I'm completely honest, I'm so close still to finishing the book and all the work we have done that I haven't even reread it. So I'm not in that phase yet where I go, oh, this should have been there, or I wish I had done this differently.
Good.
I'm sure that will come in a few months, but right now I'm so in the thick of it still mentally that I can't say that yet.
That's fair. That's fair. That's actually to me a process flow kind of thing, right? So you're right. David?
Yeah,
what about you?
I've got one actually, which is I've discovered since we kind of closed the writing, what looks like, and I've only just peeled this back, a whole wealth of scientific data and research on the idea of picking your own team. You just call it something else. So we've given this the title self-selecting teams because that kind of works in a business setting. And I think we've discovered that there's actually a real, going back over decades, history of scientific research which we can tap into. And it's one of those things where you do something and you go, oh, this seems to work. And then when you look beneath the surface, there's actually reasons and psychology and evidence that sits beneath it. And with more time, and make this a 4-year book writing cycle rather than a 2-year cycle, we could have underlaid some of that scientific research. But go on, Sandy.
There's one thing that I'm thinking of we should have included, or it could have been, it's tiny. I told you about that. It's there's a friend of mine who sent me an excerpt of the Peopleware book it's from the 80s, 70s.
No, Peopleware. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, like famous foundational book in our world. And there is a paragraph, and Tom DeMarco doesn't make anything big out of it, but there's a paragraph where he mentions that during that time already they had a company and where people had to self-select and then pitch to management the project they wanted to do. And I've read the book many times, but I never noticed that paragraph, and someone sent it to me, and I think it would have been a really neat thing to include it because it's such a foundational work.
To set the stage a little bit or connect the dots backward a little bit. That's good. Thank you both for sharing that. I mean, that's maybe save those ideas for the 3rd edition.
No, this is it. This is okay. It is that much pain, huh?
I want to pain, but it's the going into it like let's make a few tweaks and update the book to. We are basically rewriting every single sentence.
I know it's a tremendous amount of work. The other thing, David, I was going to react to your the research, but if you included the research, I think you'd have to change that wonderful cover, because it would have to be a stuffier cover.
It would.
So. Right, and I like the
lose
dog.
The size, we'd lose the size. The compliment on the small nature of the book that would be blown out. So this could be one of those examples. It's a really good thing that we didn't include that.
I just want to congratulate you both. It's a great book. The first edition was great. I've been on the beta for Pragmatic Bookshelf for the book, so I've read. I've not every word, but I've scanned the beta copy, and I just like your work. So I wanted to just congratulate you both on that. And thanks for sharing it. If we have the time, Josh, I don't know if we have the time. Oh, you're welcome. I'd like to talk a little bit about Sandy's company. We glossed over it. Nomad 8. And maybe we could, to me, if I remember correctly, Sandy and David, Nomad 8 is modeled after CRISP to some degree, if I remember, or CRISP in Sweden. And I think you modeled some of your structures and things about that. And I think you have a novel business. It's not just an Agile consultancy, but could one of you or both of you just talk about the organizational setup? Like, I'm enamored with you walking your talk or practicing what you preach. So could you talk a little bit about Nomad 8?
Sure. First of all, I want to say it's not just like my company. This is also David's company. We are 3 people who are kind of the people who we're 3 directors officially in the company. David, Brenda, me. But going back to 2006, it was me and Brenda, and we started contracting through a company, and we're a bit lonely and thought it'd be really cool to have more people to bounce off ideas, to have a kind of a home. And I looked into consultancy models, and I actually dislike them all. I don't want to do the upselling and cross-selling and principal consultants and all. Who says you have to run a consultancy like that? And I've known Henrik Knieberg for like 20 years, and I have worked in Sweden, so I knew about them. And I gave Henrik a call and said, hey, if I come over to Stockholm, can you tell me everything that you have done? And I go away and steal it all. Are you okay with that? And Henrik said, absolutely. I always had a dream that other people would use this model. And I went to Stockholm. He taught me everything. It's like, cool, I'll steal it. So we started exactly like CRISP, where the basic idea is this is a home for consultants. Everyone works as much or as little as they want to with clients they like. And they keep most of the money they make. If you work a lot, you get more money. If you work a little, you get less money. And there is no formal hierarchy. You don't need to have approval for things, but you make decisions in the same way, depending on if it's a really dangerous big decision, you would hopefully involve other people. But there's no hierarchical structure. And people get joy out of their work. And we have the integrity to work with clients and do what's best for them and just do good work. We have since moved probably a bit, we are a bit different to CRISP, also because CRISP are like 30 people, we are way fewer people, so there were a lot of the things that we didn't need, process we didn't need, but that's actually not the main point. It was the philosophy and the ideas are the same. And after starting Nomad 8, we added people, and David was one of the people we added as a director, I think a few years after we started.
I just thought I'd shine a light on that because I've just always admired CRISP, just those sort of open organizational structures for consultants. And I think CRISP is open sourced. If you can get all of their model agreements and things like that on their website. So it's really interesting. So Metacasters, anyone who's interested in sort of looking at a consultancy in a very different way, I would highly recommend looking at it. Hey, Josh, how do we want to wrap? Go ahead, David. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, wanted to share my favorite Nomad 8 rule, just because you kind of showed interest, and it's what's needed when you get a bunch of coaches and consultants together. So we have a rule about when we are all together that there's no uninvited coaching, because if you have a room of people like us, someone asks a question, someone asks a great question back, and then they answer that with a powerful question, and we end up in a loop. And one of my favorite rules that we have is, no, we don't do that unless that's exactly what you've asked for. And one of the great things we've done is make things explicit that are usually implicit, where you bounce these things around and you're like, well, that was a weird hour we wasted. So no uninvited coaching is something I'm going to I think I'll get that tattooed somewhere. I really like that idea.
I like that. I like that rule. You know where I thought, as you introduced it, I thought you were going to bring alcohol in, like we will make no decisions without bourbon or scotch or something.
That is a rule. So
okay,
that's just number 2 on my hierarchy of favorite rules.
It's number 2. Rightfully placed. Absolutely. Yeah. I love that rule. Josh, what about landing? What do you think?
So dots connected for me. Bob and I explored a couple of different working together opportunities over the past, I don't know, decade maybe.
Yeah.
And Nomad 8 was one of those things he sent to me. He's like, Josh, you should look at this. You should look at these folks. They're doing something cool. And if we do something, we should do something like that. So yeah, dots connected now. It's all coming together. So kudos to you guys for, I certainly looked at everything that you guys were doing with the company and was intrigued, impressed, and it's how you would want to do things. It certainly fits in with the self-selection model that you've worked with, and it just all kind of makes sense. It all works together. It's one of those things where lots of people will look at it, and very similar to David, the roller coaster of emotions that you mentioned that people go through. I imagine people looking at the way that you're running your company. Folks are like, oh yeah, no, that'll never work. Yeah, right. That'll never happen. But, with good, intelligent adults, like self-selecting, all those good, smart things happen. And then, surprisingly enough, amazing things happen on the other side of the mission. So kudos to you guys.
Can I end it this way I have such... Well, go ahead, Sandy.
I wanted to add that we have been standing on the shoulders of giants like CRISP and also probably Tom DeMarco without knowing it. So we are absolutely happy to share back and advance the whole field. And apart from our book, which is one of those attempts to share back, we're also happy to share our Nomad 8 handbook and give you access to how we run things. It's basically a fork of Crisp without having had the time to put it into GitHub. But we're happy to share.
Cool. All right. Well, I will. We'll definitely need to connect after and get all of your social media profiles and all these links. They'll be very helpful to everybody that's listening and watching. So if you're hearing this, you're like, oh yeah, I want to do that. It'll be in the description.
Hey, Josh.
Yes, sir.
People always put me on the spot and say, what, Bob, do you think the future of Agile is? And they try to get me to project the future in some way. And I'm going to put Sandy and David on the spot and ask them to briefly, if they had one wish for the future of Agile, one brief wish that they would, or a hope or a wish, what would it be?
I strongly believe, more than just a wish or a hope, I strongly believe that we will find back to the essence of Agile, to do amazing work by collaborating, and we will find practices as we go. They will change, but it's the hey, you've got a big problem, you chunk it up into smaller problems, you do the important stuff first, and you do it while you collaborate in a team. And just remembering that essence, that simplicity, I think will come back. And I definitely really hope so. And I think it's absolutely necessary in times like these.
Thank you, Sandy. David, what about you?
Yeah, nicely put. I think I'm going to change the question in my head a bit. Is one of those things where you get a great question and it's so good I don't know the answer. And instead say, I have a wish around just generally that in future it'll be as crazy to pick your own teams by a manager moving people around as it is to start a product conversation now with a 2-year big bang approach. Like, I think we would all look at that now and go, no, we would never do that. And I've got this secret hope around, and this is where my head's at because we've been immersed in this topic for 2 years of rewriting the book, but that on a team selection basis, that it would be as crazy for a manager to pick your teams as it would be to start a waterfall project tomorrow. So I hope that seed grows.
Nicely done, both of you. Nicely played. Josh.
Yes.
You want to bring us home?
Yes. Okay. So, David, Sandy, I don't know if you've ever listened to our episodes or not. If you haven't, maybe you've never made it all the way to the end, which I understand. I wouldn't blame you. But we have this thing we've been doing for, I don't know, like 15 years now, where we go in order. So Bob always starts it. So we'll go Bob, Josh, Sandy, David, where Bob says, from beautiful downtown, wherever he is. Then I go from beautiful downtown, wherever I am. Then we go back through the loop. Bob says, I'm Bob Galen. Then I say Josh Anderson, then Sandy, then David. Then hopefully you've seen the movie Talladega Nights and you know the shake and bake. Well, Bob and I have been shaking and baking for some number of years, and we punch the camera at the same time. So I apologize if you're all like, what the hell is this guy talking about? It's okay if we screw it up. It's never been silky smooth. Bob and I still get it wrong every time. So we're going to at least try. And if it doesn't work, that's okay. You know what? Because we're Agile and we'll do it again. We'll get better next time. So, all right, Bob, here we go.
So from beautiful downtown Cary, North Carolina.
And from beautiful downtown Fuquay, Varina, North Carolina.
And from the beautiful beaches of Auckland, New Zealand.
And from beautiful beaches of Auckland, New Zealand.
I'm Bob Galen.
I'm Josh Anderson.
I'm Sandy Mamoli.
I'm David Mole.
Shake.
And bake.
Take care, y'all.
Wow, nicely done, everybody. Impressive.
From the beautiful beaches.
Yeah,
oh,
man,
my God.
Rub it in.
Rub it in.
Jeez. Okay.